And we are live for the second time in a row. I actually got a live stream going without any issues. My hair is kind of still wet. I was running a little bit late and I was just like, oh man, I'm not going to make this in time. But however, I did. So if you haven't met me before yet, my name is Jewett and I run this here channel. I run live streams twice a week on Sundays, starting at 8 p.m. and until I'm done. Usually runs about an hour, hour and a half. And I also run them on Wednesdays, like tonight, from 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And what I do these live streams for is to I guess a little bit speak my mind as far as IT industry and certification and stuff like that goes, but also just, you know, to open up the floor for questions and things like that to help people out in their certification needs or just figuring out computers in general and networks. The whole idea of this channel is to help people get started in their IT career. IT is something that I'm very passionate about. So for me, doing this is more of a, like, you know, giving back kind of thing than it is anything else. I gotta stop doing that. I have my webcam attached to the table that I have here, and one of the things I noticed, if you haven't seen it yet, I published a video, one of my first videos on the CompTIA Network Plus. If I could ever say it correctly, you should see how many takes that I had to do to say it correctly. But the CompTIA Network Plus exam objectives, I'm working through that in a series of videos. And I guess I'm going to talk more about that tonight because I have some thoughts on it. I've been asked a couple of times from some friends and colleagues, you know, hey, why are you doing videos on YouTube when there's already people out there that are basically doing them? You know, like there's like people like Professor Messer that does like the A+, Net+, Project Plus, Security Plus kind of structure, and he gives his videos for free and stuff like that. But you know, there's like a paywall when you want his notes or something like that, and that's something that I'm trying to stay away from. And more than anything else, this channel is more of an outlet for myself, and basically doing something I really love doing. So, you know, so yeah, in producing that video today or publishing that video, I published it last night about 4 o'clock in the morning. Because that's when I got done, and I was like, hey, I need to get a video out. The last time I made a video, I think it was, you know, earlier this year or even before that, and it was on A+, the 22901 and the 22902, and I've kind of abandoned that effort, mostly just because I'm looking at the release dates of the exams, the A+ exam, the Net+ exam, Security Plus exam, all those exams. They're in a refresh period right now, and the next one to be refreshed is the A+, the CompTIA A+ exam. So they're in the first part of 2019, the first quarter. They're coming out with the actual, I think it's going to be the 220.10.02 and the 220-10.01, if I remember correctly. They still haven't published the objectives for that exam, so I will not be putting any videos together for that until that is actually published, because I like to follow more of what CompTIA really wants you to know and what they're testing against. And you'll see by this, as evidenced by this latest video that I put out on the Net+, is I do focus on the objectives, but sometimes I kind of trail off and I kind of babble too much, and I'm trying to correct that. Part of the problem I have is I get excited about the subject and I want to continue and continue, and this is a problem that I've had for years. I mean, when I used to teach for UEI and Kaplan College, I used to teach for Kaplan College. I used to teach their CST program, and I helped out some with their CNT program. One's called the Computer Support Technician program. The other one was called the Computer Network Technician program. And I taught in both as needed, and ended up leaving Kaplan when they taught out the program. They closed out the program, decided that it wasn't making them enough money. So, you know, kind of ended my tenure there with them. But then I went to teach for UEI, and I started teaching business classes there, and then they opened up an IT program, and I was the director, or the lead, as they would say, for that program. Meaning I came up with, you know, I was given what they wanted as an outline of curriculum, but I was responsible for actually building the curriculum and making sure that as we taught the program, the students were getting the right information, stuff like that. And what part of the problem is I have a tendency to get excited by a subject, and I will tend to, you know, increase the explanation of whatever I'm talking about in that area, because that's just how my brain works. So it's like I think in this video I was talking about LANs, and then I went into from talking about LANs into talking about client-server network and peer-to-peer network. And it's all great information, and it's all important. And if you follow the book that I'm actually referencing through this series, you know, they do basically the same thing, but you know, it's usually like a brief, like 3-line paragraph or something like that. You know, hey, this is peer-to-peer, and hey, this is client-server, and it seems to me like there's a lot of times more wanting there. So, you know, and then there's other things that they cover in the book that I don't quite cover in the video. For example, in the Network Plus exam, in the objectives for that, CompTIA has created the certifications in a tiering program. So the idea is that A+ is your entry tier. So it being your entry tier, they will, you know, assume that you've gone through that and you know what a server is, you know what a workstation is, you know what a virtual machine is, and things like that. So when you come back to like the Network Plus exam, when they lay out the objectives for that exam, they will, you know, call out things that you haven't yet learned. Because again, the whole idea is that you do A+ first, then you go the Net Plus and the Security Plus and so on and so forth. So if they assume that you should know, if you're taking the Network Plus exam, you should know what, you know, what a server is and what a workstation is. They're not going to list it as part of the objectives of the exam, but you can bet your bottom dollar that when you actually take the exam, they will ask you questions on, you know, what defines a server, you know, RAID levels and things like that, because that is, you know, as part of the actual exam, that is a section, is like knowing how to build redundancy in your network and things like that. So both exams are basically entry or stepping points into the industry. And and a lot of people hear, you know, entry point or stepping point into the industry, and they automatically think that, well, you know, they can just pass the A+ and you know, get into a tech job and stuff like that is not quite that easy. There's a lot of people in the industry that fake it until they make it kind of thing. There's people that are just really good at technology. You know, I kind of put myself in kind of this category just because, like, when I was younger, I was all about taking things apart and putting it back together and figuring out how it worked and stuff like that. I mean, at one point I took a alarm clock apart that my parents had just bought me to wake up for school, and I found a car speaker and I hooked it up, and when I found out that wasn't loud enough, I figured out how to connect the alarm clock to a radio receiver to boost the signal to make the speaker louder. And at one point we had neighbors that would come to our door and actually knock on the door because my alarm was waking them up, but I was still asleep. So it's just that kind of thing. So there's a lot of people that are like that, and you know, to figure out the item that, or to figure out how something works, and what they'll typically do is they'll read just enough or do enough Google searches to just figure out what they think they need to know, kind of thing. And that works great as being a person that is trying to figure out your own stuff and trying to just do what you think is right. Like if you're building your own system, you know, when you build your own system, you might, you know, watch someone like Jay's 2 Cents and, oh, I want to get into water cooling, or, you know, watch, you know, was it Bitwit or something like that. You might watch these guys and they're doing great in the, you know, their channels are good, but they're more of a review channel. And unless they do a special series on how to match your components and stuff like that, it's really hard to understand how the computer actually works. The guy that I watch personally that kind of gets close to it, but still kind of a bit far, is Paul's Hardware, and he does a pretty good job of doing like monthly builds where he'll do a system on PC Part Picker, and you know, which is easy because PC Part Picker will tell you when, you know, you're trying to use a component that's not compatible with another component, and so on and so forth. But you know, it's still not getting into the nitty-gritty. I mean, when you study for the A+ exam, you are learning about everything that is at its basic, but it tells you what it is. Like, okay, this is a system bus. Well, what makes it a system bus? And what do you need to know about that system bus? I mean, granted, computers nowadays a lot of it is plug and play, but back in the day, you would go and you'd buy a Pentium 3 system, and you set it up and you go to connect your PCI cards or ISA cards or EIDE cards, and you would get, you know, with PCI you would get like 2 or 3 cards in, and you would wonder why is my computer running slow? I mean, I got these good cards in there, you know, and stuff like that. But when you learn about buses, and it's the same in networks, is when you have a bus and everything's on the same connection cable, you can only go as fast as your slowest component. So if you have a really fast component next to a slow component, the problem is you're still going to get bupkis as far as speed, because again, you're only as fast as your slowest component. So you know, a lot of people don't understand that. And I guess where I'm trying to go with this is in doing the videos, I notice a lot about my videos that I try to adjust. Like I'm my harshest critic. That's why it takes me a little bit longer to produce videos in the first place. But at the same time of doing my own videos, I do look up other people that are actually doing like the A+ exam. Today I did a search on people that have done videos on the 220 901 exam, and a few that have done some stuff on the 220 902, and there's a ton of them out there. And the reason why there's a ton of them out there is because that exam is old. It's been out for almost 4 years, and it's in its update cycle. So, you know, that's had time, and a lot of the videos I'm seeing are from like 2016, 2017, and stuff like that. But the problem I have with a lot of the videos I see is, number one, some of them are either too technical, which for some people, you know, they just want the facts, and that's good. But I'm seeing a lot of them where they advertise themselves as being help for like the 90 or the 220 901 and the 220 902, and even going into Net Plus stuff. And they'll sit there and go, hey, I just got done taking the exam, and gee whiz, you know, when I took the exam, these were the questions I was asked. I saw one today where there's a gentleman, and he's sitting in his car, and he's obviously doing like a selfie video. And in the selfie video, one of the first things he says is, I just got out of the test center. I just passed, of course. I passed my 220 901. And then he goes on to say, he goes, you know, after taking that test and everything, I'm just going to tell you straight, right here and now, you know, you don't need to learn from the book. And I kind of agree in some way, but it was just like, his point was being that not only did you not have to learn from the book, but he was just like, hey, if you can plug cards in, you can pass the exam. Well, I beg to differ in a way. I think sometimes some people are luckier than others. And I guess the best question would be like, to him is like, what was your actual score? Like, how much did you actually pass the exam by? Because yes, there's a lot of stuff on that exam that you can just be a good guesser at. And really with any certification exam, there's a level of that. And the companies that produce the exams or produce the material, they do their best to really try to test you in a gamut of things. And they do their best to try to keep you challenged. And that's really what it is to challenge you and see if you know at least the basic information. So can you pass the 220 901 and the 220 902 just by watching videos online, doing searches on Google, doing searches on YouTube, and you know, just getting enough information to pass? Yeah, you can. And I would venture to say that the actual certifications that you take are not the real test. The real test is when you're in the field and you're helping a client. And I can tell you from experience that you don't typically keep clients if you go in front of them and your number one answer to them every time they ask you a question is, well, let's go search Google. I mean, if the client wanted you to search Google all the time, then they would search Google themselves, you know. And not saying that Google is not a good tool, but you're going to find yourself in this career in situations where you do not have that accessible to you. And I mean, I can understand the argument of like, oh, bull crap or bullshit, Jacob. There's no way that I can't search Google. Well, I've been in areas where there is no internet access. I've had to do work for oil companies in the middle of bum, you know what, nowhere, and there's no internet connection. You know, oh, well, tether your cell phone. I can't because there's no cell phone service. So I got no cell phone service, I got no internet, And the client hired me to come out there and fix their DirecTV connection, so that, or not DirecTV, HughesNet connection, so that they do have internet, okay? And I need to be able to diagnose that. And I need to be able to understand how that system works and how it's interconnected and how everything goes, you know. And there's been times I've been called out to a client for one issue, and actually I'm fixing another issue, you know, and they expect you to know the information, and the only way you're going to get that information is through number one, trial and error, but hopefully, you know, when you're doing your trial and error, you're not doing your trial and error on the user's actual machine. I mean, that's not going to help anyone. But hopefully, when you're doing your trial and error, it's in your own office. I mean, if you look behind me, I have a workbench behind me. That's not for woodwork. That is literally my teardown bench. I do. You know, I work on friends and family's computers and stuff like that. Back when I was in business for myself, I would use that for tearing down the actual machines and fixing them and stuff like that. And, you know, I just now have a job where I don't really tear down machines so much anymore, because I'm in a corporate level job, and my job function is completely different than what it's been for, you know, 20 years, 21 years. So, you know, that being said, you know, you just have to have that knowledge. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone in behind clients not behind clients, but I've gone in behind other technicians, and I've had to fix something that they've messed up. And usually when I go into a client that's in that situation, I have to be damage control. And you may say, well, you know, damage control on their system. No, a lot of times what I have to do is do damage control for our industry as a whole. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of technicians out there that there's a lot of people out there that call themselves technicians, unfortunately, and they think that, oh, well, I fixed my computer at home, or I know how to use Facebook or YouTube, and they'll turn around and try to go fix someone's computer and just screw it up even more. And you know, that really reflects badly on us as an industry in total, because what ends up happening is, you know, the customer get one or two technicians out to their home to fix something, and they've gotten screwed over. They've been charged, you know, for the hours the person was out there, and yet they're having to call me out there now. And you know, you know, they may have been being charged by the previous technician, you know, $45 an hour, you know, $75 an hour, because, you know, they can save you money. Well, you know, I'll go out to a client and, you know, they'll ask me how much, and I'll say $125 an hour, and, you know, for home or, you know, something like that. And they're like, oh my God, that's a lot. Well, the difference between me and the guy that doesn't know what they're doing is I can only fix the issue, but I can fix it in a lot less time than the guy that just got done screwing you. I mean, how much money did you spend with that guy versus me? I have the certifications that back it up. I have the years of experience. And I mean, it doesn't take people very long with me to know that I do know what I'm talking about, and I am good at what I do. You know, I've had clients that have called me after they've had other techs out to their location that, like, I know that sounds redundant, but what I'm trying to say here is, like, I've had clients that were my client when I had my own business, or I was working for a company where I was the IT director, and I serviced that client or helped them out or whatever. And I've since left that company, or I've since closed my own business, and now that client is calling me, begging me to come out to their location and do their stuff for them because they can't find anyone that can do what I can do. And what's funny is that I find that statement funny because anyone can do what I can do. I mean, if you're willing to put in the time and effort into learning the information, you can do everything I do. And I mean, I look at people in other positions that are different from mine, and you know, I can do what they can do. I just have to put the time and effort in it. I mean, and so it's just crazy sometimes. It's, you know, people don't want to put the effort in things, and I've had technicians literally tell me that they're not going to do this and they're not going to do that. And unfortunately, in the IT industry, you cannot just get your A+ exam once, get your Net Plus exam once, get your security exam once, whatever the case may be, and just expect that you're going to have to do no more learning, because this industry changes so much. It's literally changed so much in the 20 years that I've been part of it, that there's no way that you could be successful in this industry without continuing education of some sort. And, you know, so it kind of infuriates me a little bit that when I watch these videos, and I watch, you know, a couple of videos today where they were like doing exam cram videos. I mean, exam crams have always been a problem, and I don't like them on YouTube. I mean, I'm a bit of a Boy Scout, I guess, in that area. For example, the gentleman I mentioned earlier, where he was on there telling people that he just passed the 220-901 exam. One of the things he said during that video is, you know, that he just passed it, and he said what I said earlier about the books and stuff. But the other thing he stated was that, you know, he's got this deck of questions that he got, or a deck of information that he got from Professor Messer, and he'll put it up for free for anyone. Well, that's violating someone's copyright. That's violating their copyright. That's violating the work that they put into that effort. I mean, I choose to do stuff that I do here for free to help other people out because I like what I do. But at the same time, it's, you know, if I decided to charge for my material, as far as like that, like I put a question database together or something like that, which I would never do in the first place. There's a reason why I wouldn't, and I think I've kind of covered it so far. But you know, if I saw someone else putting my stuff out there for free without my permission, I would come down on them like a full-fledged force, with cease and desist letters and all that. Not because I don't want to share the knowledge, and I don't think knowledge should be free. I mean, that's why I do this channel. Is I got tired of working for companies that charged people a crap ton of money for something that in the end ended up to amount to a whole lot of nothing for them in the end. You know, making promises that they'll help them get a job and stuff like that. That's you know, that's wrong, and that's not how you take care of people. So yeah, so one of the things during this video is he said that you know, he didn't say, he started going through the questions that he was asked during the exam and explaining, for example, he was explaining the simulations that he had to do and what he had to do and what was the right answer and how this was working and this and that. And then he went through the, you know, a list of questions that he was asked and what was the right answer and stuff like that. The problem with that is in the exam, before you even take the exam, you sign a non-disclosure agreement. You sign an agreement saying that you will not disclose to anyone the questions that you are being asked during that exam, to help with the integrity of that exam. I mean, and you may be looking at me saying, Jacob, this is a bunch of crap. What do you care? I mean, what do you care? The problem is that guy with the A+ certification, if he passed this, during the video, he said he passed this 220-901. He didn't say he passed this 902. So at that point, he's only got half of the A+ certification. He's still got to do the other half, right? So, you know, let's say he passes that certification. Let's be much more general about it. Let's say a guy, Joe Blow, comes along and he decides that he wants to pass the A+ exam. And all he does is go to the internet, download exam cram questions, sit there, memorize the questions, and memorize the answers. Okay, and if you don't know what exam crams are, they're databases of questions where people have taken the exam and they've figured out some way of copying them, and they'll give you the exact questions they were asked and the exact answers. And the problem with that is yeah, I can study questions and answers all day, but at the end of the road, when I actually go in front of a customer or someone and say, look, I'm A+ certified, okay, and this is what A+ certified means. If I go in and F up their machine because I don't know what I'm actually doing, then it lowers the standard for all of us that have passed the A+ exam. It lowers the standard for all of us that have passed the Net Plus exam. And this has been a problem for years. Back when I first got in the industry, right out of high school, I started working in IT before I got out of high school. I was a technician for the high school I worked for 2 different high schools I went to. They brought me on as a technician. And a year after I graduated my last high school, I went back and worked for the high school for 6 years as an actual full-time employee. Excuse me. So, you know, getting into the industry, I worked for a company called New Horizons Computer Learning Center. And during that time I was there, you could get a Microsoft certification, just one. You had to get like server, or you could even get away with getting workstation. And then you had to get like a CNA or a certified Novell administrator exam. You passed that. And with those 2 exams and possibly A+, this is back in 1998, 99, you could take those 2 certifications, go to any company you wanted because of the need for technicians, and easily get, you know, $125,000 a year job, and right out of the gate. And unfortunately, that didn't last very long, because what was happening is these exam cram books were out there, and these people were just memorizing questions and answers. And so what ended up happening was the industry got flooded with these technicians, these exam cram technicians that didn't know anything about what they were doing, and they were screwing a whole bunch of shit up. Excuse my language, but they were screwing it up hugely. You know, now I've gone 20 years, at least 20 years in the industry now, and there's a lot of certifications that I could have gotten that I haven't gotten. And the reason why I haven't gotten them is not because I didn't want them, but because at one point they were so devalued, it made no sense for me to get them. My work history and the knowledge that I was able to project so that people knew that I knew what I was doing, and the actual my actual work ethic and all that stuff is what's kept me alive and afloat through the industry. You know, I've had my MCP, Microsoft Certified Professional. I've had 2 versions of it. I had the 2000, the server 2000 server and workstation for Microsoft, and I've had the 2003 server workstation, and I've passed the A+ exam 3 times now. Well, it'll be a 4th time this Friday because I take the 220-902 this Friday because it's required for a program I'm taking right now. And I've passed the Net Plus exam. So I've passed many exams, and so far, and knock on, I guess, glass, my desk is glass, but so far, I have not failed one exam that I've attempted. And it's because I study like hell, and I really want to know the subject. So I know the subject as best as I can before I go take the exam, and then I take the exam and I pass. I'm 10 for 10 or something crazy. It's probably more than that. I mean, I've had to take ITIL certifications and stuff like that, but I put a lot of work into it, and then it kind of infuriates me when I see people basically advertising to everyone else, well, you can pass this exam without the actual work involved. And you can. I mean, I'll be the first to admit it, you can. The problem is it will lead you to a whole lot of nowhere. And, you know, and I'm kind of practicing what I preach here, because, you know, I just said that last week I took the 220-901 and passed, of course. Well, of course, but I passed. I've taught the class many times, and I've taken the exam many times. There's some new information in it. I won't go into the details of the actual questions, but there was, you know, a lot more mobile information involved versus previous times I've taken it, because, I mean, these are much more prevalent than they used to be. There's some old information in it as well, you know, like things about, you know, the chipset and, you know, the North Bridge versus the South Bridge. Well, most of our motherboards that we have these days, they don't have a North and South Bridge. They have a central chipset. You know, most of what was handled by the North Bridge is now handled by the processor itself or the CPU itself. So, you know, and I mean, a lot of the questions were about, you know, some old operating systems and things like that. And for me, the test was a little bit harder, not because it was hard, it was because I had to revert my thought processes to older technology. I work for a corporation right now where a lot of our technology, we try to be as bleeding edge as we can possibly be within reason. And so a lot of our stuff, you know, we don't have any Windows 8 stuff, but there's still some Windows 7 stuff out there. But most of our stuff now is like Windows 10 and stuff like that. So, you know, servers, we're getting rid of everything that's older than 2012 or even that's old now. So, you know, when you get asked questions about stuff that has been deprecated, you know, in the A+ exam, you have to redo your thinking a little bit and kind of revert back to when you used to work on that stuff a lot. And if I were still like a technician that went to people's houses and fixed computers and stuff like that, that would be no problem, because there's still a ton of people out there that are using Windows 7. There's still a ton of people out there that are using like Windows 8, Windows 8.1, but I'm not exposed to that anymore. So sometimes it takes a little bit more to kind of reignite that light and regurgitate that information. But that's, you know, it's important. So when I say that I'm practicing what I preach, at my job, I went from being a systems administrator whereas a level 2, level 3 tech, to being more of a level 3 tech or IT professional. Level 3 in our industry, there's tiers. So that you got tier 1, which is like your entry level. You have tier 2, which is, you know, you've gotten all the information as a tier 1. You're now somewhat of an expert, or you are an expert in certain fields, but you can kind of help the level 1 guys out, and you basically can handle most problems. But when you are over your head on something or underwater on something, you go to the tier 3 guy and ask him questions, or him or her questions, and then they help you out, and then, you know, basically the information goes down the tree. I'm now more of a tier 3 person almost completely. I do some tier 2 stuff still, but I'm responsible for assisting in implementing actual full-on new solutions for a major organization. I went from, back in the day, or I went from like 3 or 4 years ago from supporting networks that were, anywhere from 5 computers to, I think the biggest at the time I supported was like 500. When I worked for the school system, I worked with, I think it was 1,200 systems. I went from that to working for a corporation where I literally support or help support, upwards of 17,000 systems at like 20 different locations. So it's, that type of IT is way different than the type of IT that you do where you're just going and helping users, or helping home users or small businesses. But, I got offered a position that uses a lot of the strengths that I used as a sysadmin, but now I'm asked to do more. I'm actually moving into a security professional. So I'm responsible for a lot of the security aspects of the network, and things like physical security of data centers, making sure that we pass penetration testing, making sure that that our attack profile is small, and how we test it, how do we patch against it, how do we do this and that. There's a lot involved in that, and there's a lot of working with people with it. I knew once I got the position that I wasn't, I'm a damn good tech, and I have plenty of material to back that up, and plenty of people that know me to back that up. But what I mean is I've gone into a different branch of it, and in doing that, I understood that there's a lot about that branch of security that I don't know a lot about. I mean, I've had exposure to it, but having exposure to something is different than being responsible for implementing and making sure that when someone in like a lead position, in a high up position, a vice president of the company comes to you and asks you a question, that when you answer that question, they know that the information that you've given them is accurate, and that they can bank on that information. I give you an example. I was asked recently about testing schedules and stuff like that because of possible changes coming up, and I was asked by a director of a division, and I was asked, and I provided the information, and I wasn't questioned on that information because the information I provided was as accurate as it could be to my knowledge. So in doing that, I've personally have gone back to school to get a degree in security, in IT security, or information assurance and IT security. I'm actually going to WGU for this. I've chosen them because they are a nonprofit school, and they don't, you know, they charge you a minimum, and it's actually cheaper than going to a lot of schools here in town. And I'm a pretty good self-learner. A lot of the reason why my videos take a while to come out is because I'm very critical on how I present the information, and I also want to make sure that, you know, in myself, I know the information, but a lot of times I reference a lot of things because I want to make sure that the information I'm giving out is not incorrect. And if it is incorrect, or I find something later on that's incorrect, I will actually tattle on myself because I want to make sure that whatever information I'm giving to someone is as accurate as it can be at the time I give them that information. Because the last thing I want to do is kind of lead someone down to the wrong road. Anyway, I know I'm rambling a bit. I've got no viewers right now, and I'm kind of in the process of doing this whole, you know, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. So, you know, my own field of dreams, if you like to say. So, you know, I would like to say again that after all that rambling, it's still an industry I love. I am happy to help anyone that wants to learn, anyone that wants to go forward in this industry, and that's the reason why I do these live streams. So the whole purpose of the live stream is, again, as I said in the beginning, it's to basically open the floor and treat it as if you were in an actual classroom where you could ask the instructor questions and clarify things. So I do that because I like doing it, and you know, I don't expect to get paid for it. I do have a Patreon, but that's more of just helping me get better equipment. A lot of the stuff that you see behind me over here, the lights, the computer, everything I use, the new lavalier mic that I got here that I freaking love. This thing is freaking awesome. But this mic and everything that I use, I've paid for all this stuff out of my own pocket, and which I understand it's a hobby, so I don't have, you know, a whole bunch of right to complain. And figuring out how everything works, like OBS and YouTube and all that stuff works, I have no problem with that because it's a learning experience. But I do have the Patreon there, just, you know, for people if they decide that they like what I'm doing and want to support it, and thereby supporting it allow me to get better equipment. Awesome. I mean, but if the Patreon goes nowhere, I'm not gonna sweat it, because why? Yeah. So what I'm gonna cover in my next video, coming out here, I'm hoping to have it done by tomorrow night and published, is I'm going to be covering still covering the Objective 1.5 in the CompTIA Network Plus exam objectives for the N10, and I've been calling it the 007 just because I mess it up any other way. I'm going to be covering wired topologies and talk about the communications versus logical and physical. I'm also going to be covering wireless topologies, the difference between a mesh, ad hoc, and infrastructure, and that will pretty much complete that video. I got a lot of the material done. I'll show it here. Let me pull up let's do demo cam here. Oh, wrong one, so we'll do, yeah, that works. So if you look down here, I have let me pull it up, Visio. So if I open up the Visio that I'm working on, you will see that I have the actual, I've been putting together the actual topologies. And I guess so that you don't go completely empty-handed from this video. A bus topology, you have a star topology here, you have the ring, and then you have a mesh. I haven't done the diagrams for the wireless technologies yet, but I will. Again, I plan on having that video in the can and online, hopefully tomorrow night. So I will be discussing, the difference between bus, star, and mesh, and how these differ when they're considered either physical or logical. So look out for that video. And then shortly thereafter, I plan on having the technologies that facilitate the Internet of Things, which will, if I get that done, that will complete the objective 1.5 for the Net Plus exam, and then I'll move on to another objective. Again, if you watch my video, I explain how I'm following the particular book for the layout of how I put out my videos, but I'm just using that book as a reference so that if you decide not only to watch my videos, but you also decide to actually get the book and read the book, you can basically follow along, and the videos as I put them out there will align to what you basically understand in the book. So anyway, so that's the plan. That's where I'm going with it. And yeah, so again, I have no viewers really tonight, kind of expected on Wednesday. Hopefully as the channel grows, I'll get more viewers. If you're watching this stream after the live stream, I appreciate it, especially if you've made it this far. I do plan on streaming live again this Sunday from 8 p.m. Pacific time until I'll probably do another hour and a half, and I'll again be open for questions and stuff like that. That stream will be a little bit different. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to do it because I will be traveling. I have to implement a new system for the company I work for, and so therefore I'm traveling basically into the storm because I believe Florence is still in the area, even though it's a tropical depression, or it may not even be that anymore. But I'm flying there this Sunday, and I should be there early enough that I can get to the hotel and set up. And the fact that they're 3 hours ahead of me now means I should still be able to do the video at my regular posted time. So that's the plan. That's what I'm going to try to do. I hope to have 1 or 2 of those videos up by that time. So if you watch my videos and you come to this stream to learn something, hopefully you got something out of this video. If you didn't, please let me know. Again, I'm open to suggestions. No one's taken me up on that yet, but you can ask questions in the comment section of the video, or you can contact me via email, and I'll be happy to answer questions there. Yeah, I'm really just doing this to help people out. So, if you got questions, feel free. If you got suggestions, feel free. These live streams and my actual videos are still very new. I'm still trying to figure stuff out. So I may ramble, I may be a talking head, whatever you want to say. But I am trying to go somewhere really good with it, and hopefully you come along with me on that journey, and hopefully you get something out of it, because that's all I really want, is to help people out, and hopefully they get something out of it. Thank you for putting up with my rambling tonight. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, or the next streaming video. And if you have any questions, again, can't say it enough, feel free to ask. All right, thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you this next Saturday. Bye for now.